This is Rob Reiner, and welcome to my comments on The Princess Bride, Act 3 Communications. That's Norman Lear's company. Norman Lear, who basically owned the rights to The Princess Bride and put his own money up so that we could make this film. And a week before I went to London to start shooting, we didn't know if we had the financing. And we finally were able to get it, and it was put together. Now, this little boy, Fred Savage, eventually became the boy who was in the Wonder Years. And the whole film was shot in England at Shepperton Studios, and even this scene was shot at Shepperton. And there's a little thing, I don't think you can see it in this shot, but I'll point it out when we get to it. Mark Knopfler, who did the music for the film, a great, brilliant musician from Dire Straits, basically said he would only do the music if I the hat that I wore in Spinal Tap somewhere in evidence. And so, like I say, you can't see it in this shot, but there'll be a shot in these sequences with Peter Falk, plays the grandfather, where you'll see the hat that I wore. Let's see, maybe the camera's going to move around here. No, not yet.
Used to read to me when I was sick, and I used to read it to your father. And today,
At any rate, I read this book when I was about 25 years old, Princess Bride, because I had been a huge fan of William Goldman's. My father gave me the book because Bill Goldman had given it to him. They had become friends when Bill Goldman wrote a book about Broadway called The Season, which looked at a particular season on Broadway and all the plays that had opened. My dad had a play that opened called Something Different. And Bill Goldman devoted a chapter in his book to that play, and they became friends. And he gave this to Bill Goldman back, I think, when the book first came out, like in the early 70s. And said, "What do you think about making a movie out of this?" And my dad said, "Well, he wasn't really, hadn't read it, but he gave me the book and said, do you want to read it?" I read it, and at the time, it was the favorite book of my life that I'd ever read at that point, and probably to this point. And so then, years later, when I was thinking about making movies, I went back and reread it, and it again spoke to me. It was like as if Bill Goldman had been in my head and had written something that was inside my head. So I went to him and met with him, and he said, This is the favorite book I've ever written in my life. I want it on my tombstone. What are you going to do with it?" And I was shaking in my boots, thinking, he was going to,
what he meant was,
really criticize it. There's Robin Wright, by the way, the most beautiful, she's incredibly beautiful. And we had to find the most beautiful girl in all the land, and I think we found it with her, who not only was beautiful, but acted and did a wonderful British accent and was the perfect embodiment of the Princess Bride. At any rate, Bill Goldman was totally, challenging me as to whether or not I could pull this off. And when I told him that I basically wanted to honor his book and be as faithful as possible, he agreed to let me do it. At that time, I'd only made Spinal Tap. That was the only picture I'd made. And actually, I'd finished The Sure Thing, but it hadn't come out yet. And he saw those two pictures, and then he agreed to let me do it. So I got a chance to work with my favorite writer, and he entrusted his favorite book to me, and I was very grateful that he did that. You still can't see that hat, so I'll have to maybe find a shot where it comes out.
I don't believe that.
At any rate, this was all shot on a country farm in Derbyshire, which is in the northern part of England. And we were up there for about 5 weeks.
Hear this now. I will always come for you.
How can you be sure?
This is true.
And of course, there's Carrie Elwes, who
This happens every day.
Again, we had the perfect match here with Carrie and Robin Wright. Carrie is very reminiscent of Douglas Fairbanks Jr. We needed somebody who had that swashbuckling image, and Carrie was perfect for this part.
His ship was attacked.
In casting him, it's interesting. We met him just after there was Chernobyl, and we had to go to Germany to meet him there, and there was talk about being fallout in that area, and there was concern about people's, becoming radioactive. But we
5 years.
we risked being permanently contaminated just so we could meet Gary Elwes, and it was I think it was a smart thing to do, because I don't think anybody else could have played this part. This was shot at Haddon Hall, which was in Bakewell, which is up in Derbyshire, which was an abandoned castle that was built in 1086. It was built by William the Conqueror for his illegitimate son. And if you look up this parapet that Humperdinck is now standing on, we built actually for the film. We added some extra structural architectural elements. The one, if you look right up above there, that was all added to the existing Haddon Hall, and this was a national monument, and people would come and look at this and look through their guides, and they'd find all kinds of things that were added to it that weren't there, and they were confused because it didn't look like anything that they were in their guides. And when there was a wedding, I think it was either Fergie's wedding or somebody had a wedding here, they asked that all these things that we had added be kept there because it made the castle look better. So basically, Hollywood added a little touch to this castle, and we added a portcullis that wasn't there, which you'll see later as well. And this was all at Haddon Hall here, where we shot this. Here we're going to be introduced to Fezzik and Inigo Montoya and Vincini.
We are but poor lost circus performers.
There's Wally Shawn, who's Vincini. Needless to say, he's not Sicilian, but in the vernacular of this film, it actually worked. And there, of course, is Andre the Giant as Fezzik. And again, it wasn't like there was a lot of options in casting this part. It's not like you could throw a stick and find 50 giants. When Bill Goldman wrote the book, he had always envisioned Andre the Giant playing Fezzik. And so it took us, again, weeks to track down Andre because he was traveling around the world as a wrestler. And finally, we were able to pin him down, and we were accorded a meeting in Paris. And Andy Scheinman and I had just been at a location scout to find the Cliffs of Insanity, and we were in Ireland. And as we came back to our hotel room in London, we walked in, there was a message saying Andre would be in Paris the next day at 2:00. We went right back out the hotel, right to the airport, and we went to Paris. We stayed there overnight. And then the next day, we met Andre. We walked into the bar, and it's like described in the book. There was a landmass sitting on a bar stool, and it was Andre the Giant. And he was, like I say, the only person who could have played this part. And I actually recorded his whole dialogue on a tape because he, didn't read and couldn't, and he had to memorize it that way. And he memorized his whole part that way. And then, of course, Mandy Patinkin as Inigo Montoya, who's absolutely brilliant in this film. The most quoted line ever, anybody is, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die. So that, everybody still quotes that. Kids are still running around with swords saying, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die.
Tom.
You have a great gift for Ryan.
Yes. Some of the time.
Enough of that. Fezzik, are there rocks ahead?
If they are, they all be dead.
No more rhymes now, I mean it.
Is it okay that I tell these stories? Is that okay? Okay, because here's a great story about that line, which is I once went to a restaurant in New York that Nick Pileggi and Nora Ephron took me, and John Gotti would come there every Thursday night, and we at 8 o'clock he walks in. There was a group of wise guys with him, and I was sitting there, and we kind of recognized each other. I didn't talk to him, but after the meal was over, I went outside, and there was a huge limousine parked outside, and there was a man standing in front of it that looked like Luca Brasi from The Godfather. Big plug of a guy. He looks me right in the eye and said, "You killed my father. Prepare to die." And I almost, went in my pants right there. But he said, "I love that picture, The Princess Bride." So we know that when one of Gotti's wise guys is quoting your lines, you know you've penetrated the culture. This sequence was shot in a tank on a soundstage at Shepperton Studios. That's a little miniature back there. So it's a forced perspective to make it look like you're out on the high seas. It's actually inside a tank, and this was all shot in a tank. As a matter of fact, I remember a moment where I was actually out in the tank, which is about 3 feet of water, and I was in with hip waders, and there's a pit, an 8-foot pit. It's a small area where you can dive into if you have to make a dive, where Robin Wright just did that. And I was looking for an angle, and I walked around the boat, and I stepped into that hole, and my pants filled up with water. The hip wader filled up with water, and I just started sinking to the bottom, and there was nobody there. Couldn't get back up. And finally, I was splashing around. Somebody found me, and they dragged me out. So I almost drowned in the making of this movie, even inside of a controlled tank. And then this, of course, the shrieking eel we had here was a nice effect. And this is one of the things I liked about the movie and the book is the idea that we'd break away. And people said, you can't break away from the film like this. People will lose the thread of the story. They won't be able to get re-involved. I said, no, I think it's just going to make people get more involved. The whole idea of the book and the movie was that The Princess Bride was only going to be the good part version, that we were going to skip past all the boring parts. And so occasionally they would interrupt and we'd move forward to another exciting part. But what I love about this is it gets this boy who basically is not really interested in reading to be interested and care and excited about reading because his grandfather shared this book with him and makes it fun for him. So and it never disturbed the flow of the picture. I mean, people stayed involved and they tracked the relationship between the grandfather and the grandson, and then they stayed involved in the story of The Princess Bride. And it was, even though we kept reminding the people that it was just a book, it was just a story, the audience still stayed involved in what was going to happen with Wesley and Buttercup.
What are fishes in the same wind we are using?
Whoever he is, he's too late. See?
And there's a matte painting of the Cliffs of Insanity, which we used to replicate these cliffs that we found in Ireland called the Cliffs of Moher. And part of the shot, this was shot on a soundstage. We had matte paintings, and we also actually used the real Cliffs of Moher, which you'll see when we show some shots of them climbing up. An interesting thing is, I mean, we didn't have a lot of money to make the movie. We literally had like $16 million to make this movie. I mean, today, if you made a movie like this, you'd spend 75, 80, 90 million dollars with all this. These are the actual Cliffs of Moher in Ireland. That shot was. And here we're back on the tank. That's actual with, that's a stuntman with dummies hanging on him. Then we have matte paintings, a combination of matte paintings. This is done on the stage. That was actually done on the cliff there. That was also on the cliff right there. That's the real cliff. You can see a bird go by. But we're back on the stage here. the thing also that I love about this piece of material is that it's smart, it's funny, it's satirical. It makes fun of this adventure, Robin Hood type genre, but it also is does it with love and with respect. So you can make fun of it at the same time you are honoring the genre, and it has humor and it also has action and fun in it. It combines all these things. It's a brilliant book and a brilliant screenplay, and one of the most difficult balances that you can find is to have real excitement, tension like this, and then also be able to poke fun at it at the same time. It's a very hard thing to do, and Bill Goldman strikes that balance perfectly. And hopefully, I was faithful to that. Now, that was partly on the stage, and also a matte painting that shot looking down at Wesley. He's actually on a piece of
Whoever he is.
rock on the stage, and then we have a matte painting below.
Therefore die.
The other thing that I like is that it's a movie that adults can enjoy and children can enjoy, and it's very rare when you can share an experience with your children, and both the adults and the children get something out of it, and the adults don't have to be bored; they can sit and have a great time, and the kids are getting it on a different level. Now, the sword fight that's going to be coming up soon is interesting in that I believe it is the only time in the history of movies where the principal actors are in every single shot where there's swordplay involved. In many of the Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone movies, in the long shots, they would have stunt doubles and expert swordsmen do the swordplay. But in this sword fighting sequence coming up, you'll see that it's both Mandy and Carrie doing all the swordplay. I mean, there are some physical stunts where they do some flips, and those are stuntmen. But when it comes to the actual swordplay, it's only Mandy and Carrie. And what's especially interesting about it is they're fighting both left-handed and right-handed in the sequence, and they had to study very hard to be able to do that. Mandy actually worked for almost 8 months taking lessons, and Carrie worked for about 5 or 6. And this sequence was shot towards the end of the movie, so even during the making of the movie, whenever they had a break, they would be working with their Olympic masters and stunt people to work on their swordplay and also work on designing this sequence. And it was a real painstaking effort to design the sequence. And there was a tremendous amount of pressure put on me because, as it's described in the script, when they start fighting, Bill Goldman said, "What you're about to see is the second greatest sword fight in film history. The first greatest is coming up later in the film." So there was a tremendous pressure for me to make good on that stage direction. And so we worked very hard to make it as exciting as possible, make it as fun as possible. And like I say, the actual actors are doing the sword play. And it took us 10 days to shoot this whole sequence, from the time that Mandy pulls Carrie up by the rope, and they have this little scene where Mandy explains the history of this sword and the history of the revenge that he is seeking for his father's death. Of course, he explains how he got the scars and how the sick-fingered man, Humperdinck, left him with those scars. That line, as I said before, is probably one of the most quoted lines of any film I've ever done. The others would be my mother saying, "I'll have what she's having," and When Harry Met Sally, and Jack Nicholson saying, "You can't handle the truth," in A Few Good Men. But certainly, the line that Mandy just said is probably quoted more than any by kids. Here we go into this sword fight, and not only are they having to, sword fight, but they have to have dialogue during it, and the dialogue is wonderful and it's witty and it's so typically Bill Goldman, and that's what's so great about this. Just the blend of action and humor and sophistication, and it's really a delicate balance, and he does it perfectly. See, here they are. They're both fighting left-handed. And this is the only moment. This is the one moment. That's a stunt person that did that little flip. But all the sword play is the two of them. Here's where Mandy switches hands. Now he's fighting right-handed against Carrie's left-handed sword play, which is also difficult, too. Now here Carrie switches hands. Now that again is a stunt person, but that's Mandy, and this will be a stunt person here for the flip. But like I say, every single frame of the sword fighting is the two of them. Now, that bit we had a stagehand standing by, catching the sword and then dropping another sword into his hand. But now watch what happens here when they switch positions. Here, he switches hands in the middle of it. He goes from left-handed to right-handed. Carrie does. And there you have the second greatest sword fight in movie history. The first grade is supposed to come later, but I think this one actually was better than the one that comes later. The one that comes later has a more emotional weight to it because it's Inigo Montoya avenging his father's death, so it has all that emotional stuff to it. But this one, I think, from a pure technical standpoint, is probably the best. But I put this up against anything you would find in Scaramouche or any other sword fighting movie. Now, this next sequence coming up is going to have a wrestling match between the Man in Black and Fezzik. And we figured, well, this is one thing we didn't have to worry about with Andre because, he's a professional wrestler. But what we didn't know is that Andre had a terrible bad back. And it was very hard for him to. There's one part of where you'll see where Carrie jumps on Andre's back and holds on to him. And Andre literally couldn't hold him because his back was so bad. We had to devise some ramps for Carrie to be walking on to take the weight off of Andre's back. So even with a professional wrestler, we had to resort to Hollywood tricks in order to make this sequence work.
Kill you now.
Watch now, he jumps. That's not Andre. That we use as a double and now that is Andre, but Carrie doesn't have his weight on. He's actually standing on two ramps that we built. And so it looks like Carrie is actually hanging on him, but now again we have a double. So it's not even Andre in those wide shots. Probably shouldn't give that away, but hey, that's why you bought this thing to begin with. Find out all these things, the magician's tricks. See, that's a double right there. You can see he's even much smaller than Andre really is. Love that line, dream of larger one. Look at that nice little flip he does with the sword. I love that. They Carrie added those little things. Chris Sarandon did a good job with Humperdinck. And my good buddy Chris Guest, you'll see here, is Count Rugen, the six-fingered man. There's a good story about that, in that Chris disappears so completely into his parts that I remember at a party after a screening that we had in Los Angeles. We were all at a restaurant sitting around, talking, and Robin Wright was there, and Bill Goldman, and a lot of people from the movie were there. And Chris was sitting there. And for a second, I was wondering, I said, it's nice that Chris would come and to this party as a supportive friend. What a nice thing for him to do. And I realized he was in the movie. I mean, he loses himself. He completely immerses himself in the part to the point where I even forget that he's an actor in the movie, but he's so good. And coming up is one of my favorite sequences in the movie, the battle of wits. The tortured logic that Bill Goldman comes up with as to why Wally Shawn as Vizzini should or should not pick which goblet is just, it's masterful, it's brilliant, and it's funny. And and he winds up with this wonderfully hip, anachronistic line, which is, the famous, one of the most famous thing is never get involved in a land war in Asia, which it's like it was a great comment on the Vietnam War that's thrown into the middle of the film.
To the death.
And here we got the iocane powder. Odorless, tasteless, dissolves instantly. This was actually the first sequence we shot with Wally Shawn, and he was so good in this, but he was so nervous about his performance that he was totally convinced after we finished the day's shooting that I was going to replace him. I don't know why, but he's so funny in it. I mean, clearly he's not Sicilian, but like I say, it works so perfectly in this film.
The Battle of Wits has begun.
It was just this kind of wacky casting where because he is extremely intelligent. He's a very brilliant guy, and Vincini had to be the mastermind. He was the mastermind for the three bad guys, and he had all the wit and intelligence. And I love that kind of sort of lateral lisp that he had, and it just it seemed right.
It has worked.
Adding that little mustache to Carrie also was a great touch. That was his idea, and
What in the world?
it makes him. It gives him that Douglas Fairbanks
I don't see anything.
swashbuckling flair. Perfect little touch. Also, as you'll notice later, we take the license that Buttercup would not recognize his voice, or later when she sees him with the mask on, that she doesn't recognize that it's Wesley from the farm. It's that license that you're allowed to, which was established by Superman, which the mere adding of glasses would all of a sudden turn Superman into Clark Kent and completely confuse Lois Lane. And we all accepted that reality that they look completely different, Clark Kent and Superman. So here we have Wesley and the Man in Black, even though we've added just added the mask. We accept that he's completely somebody else. And there's that great moment where Wally Shawn keels over. My kids laugh every time they see that. So I know it has to be good.
Who are you?
We shot this at a place called Higger Tor. I remember that name. Don't ask me why, but it was a bit of a trek to get to. And when you watch a movie, you never think about The fact that behind the camera here there are trucks and equipment trucks and all kinds of things, and it was very hard to find places to park things around here. So we had to cart things up manually and with four wheelers, and it was difficult, but it was a great location, and it gave that kind of storybook feel to it. Here, if you'll notice, Harry, when he walks, he's walking kind of gingerly. He had virtually almost broken his ankle a couple of days before we shot this. He was riding around on some kind of like dune buggy kind of thing, and it flipped over and hurt himself. But you'll see, he said, "No, I can do it. I can do it." And you'll notice he's walking. He walked on. He was in such pain when he was doing this. Watch, you'll see. He keeps his weight off that one foot there when he put it out, and he made himself look elegant and suave when he sat down there. But he actually couldn't put any weight on that foot. It's amazing how many things you can remember when you watch a movie. It's like home movies for me, because I remember, more than anything, what was happening on the day when you shot something. And it brings back those memories. So anytime I see a movie of mine that I've made come on the screen, watching it on television, it's always like watching home movies for me. You can see he's walking kind of gingerly. And it was also freezing cold up there when we shot that. This sequence is one of my favorites. We have these are stunt doubles, obviously, rolling down the hill, but the whole idea of people reuniting in this manner, two people just crazily rolling down a hill, who are falling back in love with each other. It's just such a wonderful kind of anti-romantic, then wonderfully romantic way of bringing them back together again.
Closing in, which might account for his panicking and error. Unless I'm wrong, and I'm never wrong.
Look at the look Chris does when he says fire swamp. Oh, he's scared. He doesn't want to go into that fire swamp. This was perfect because just when they start kissing, that's when the little boy would not want to hear this part. And so he wants to skip past the kissing parts and get to the action. And that's what's so much fun about this.
Swamp, that sounded good.
Now they're going to start heading into the fire swamp. And as you'll see when we get into it, this was built on sound stages at Shepherd and Studios. That's all those trees in there are actually matte paintings put in there. But here's the fire swamp, and we shot this. This was the first sequence we shot in the film. And on the first day of shooting, as you'll see, Buttercup's dress catches on fire. And we literally lit our first lady, the leading lady, on fire the first day of the shoot. I think this was, like I said, it was early on the shoot, and Bill Goldman actually was on the set for these few days. He came to the first few days of the shoot, and I noticed, while the take was going on, he'd be like he'd have his back to the action, and he'd have his thumbs in his mouth, and his arms were folded. And I was saying, "What are you doing?" And he said, "This is the way it's like crossing your fingers. I'm like hoping for good luck that this will work out okay." I've never met anybody as brilliant and as talented and as superstitious as Bill Goldman. But maybe he was right. Maybe he was smart to put his thumbs in his mouth, because it worked out pretty good. And you'll see coming up in a little while, you'll have the ROUSs, the rodents of unusual size. We had actually two little people that were doing this. They were dressed up in these big rat suits. And one of them could go very fast. One of them was good just moseying and kind of sniffing around. And the other one could actually move pretty fast in the costume. And you'll see that she's going to go into the snow sand here. And we rigged a thing underneath the stage where you could fall through, and there was a little trapdoor thing underneath, but it required a really difficult thing. This stuntman did this, but Harry, because when you got right on the scene, you have to tuck under to avoid hitting all these pipes and wires and things that were underneath. And Harry, of course, wanted to do it himself. Did it the first time, he just stuck with his head in the sand, and we had to pull him out of there. And then we said, "Please, Gary, let's let the stuntman do this." See, that's the one guy who could kind of sniff and walk away. He was fine. And then you'll see later when the action happens that we knew we needed a more energetic ROUS. The fight scene that's coming up with the RUSs, the sounds that you hear coming out of the RUSs were actually made by me. I actually looped all of those sounds. We put it through harmonizers and we double recorded them and added all kinds of effects to it. But essentially, the bass sound was mine, and I did it the first time I did it. They forgot to push the record button, and I almost completely lost my voice doing it, and was so upset that they had to do it over again because it was so hoarse after doing it. But all this, that's all stuff that I actually added myself. So the voice of the RUSs is yours truly. This is the one sequence that I've heard little kids sometimes get a little freaked out over. But by and large, you can watch this with kids almost any age, and that's one of the things I love about it.
We did it.
Now they've come out of the fire swamp, and coming up, you're going to see the encounter between Wesley and the six-fingered man. And there's a moment where he gets conked on the head by the butt of the sword from the six-fingered man, and he actually Harry said, "No, hit me, it's okay." And Chris accidentally hit him on the head, and he had to go to the hospital. Carrie had to go to the hospital that day. We had to stop for the afternoon while Carrie had his cut attended to. You'll see when it happens, but you don't see any blood. There's the six-fingered man.
What is it? You have 6 fingers on your right hand. Someone.
Here comes the sword. Bonk, you don't see it. He went to the hospital with that shot. And now here we've got, in the book, Wesley has to go through the zoo of death, but in service of a limited budget, we created the Pit of Despair, which is not in the book, but it was a lot cheaper and a lot more contained, and it almost did the job of the Zoo of Death, although the Zoo of Death is great in the book. If you read the book, it's terrific. And this is a wonderful English comedian named Mel Smith playing the albino. I love that joke. It's such a cheesy joke, but it's great. You know, a bit of despair, and then he clears his throat, and of course he can talk normally. First time I heard that joke, my father said it was done. It was a bit about a train conductor calling the next stop for the train. He was going, Schenectady, Schenectady, and nobody could understand it. And then he would go, Schenectady, and it was like that was. And Chris Guest used to do that same joke. It was the Indians going around the campfire and doing the war dance, and they go, they go, hey, hey. It's the same joke. So basically, it's been around, but it worked good in this sequence. Now, what this brings up is so ridiculous. I don't even it's worth mentioning. But we shot this on the stage at Shepperton, and there was a fire guard, because we had these torches that were lit in the castle, and the fire guard fireman was a guy that looked just like Captain Kangaroo. He was a British guy, but he looked exactly like Captain Kangaroo. And every time Chris and I would walk by him, we'd go, dun, 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 which is the theme song for Captain Kangaroo. This guy had no idea why we were humming that, but of course, for us, that was, kept us going.
There.
There's the courtyard of Haddon Hall. This was an actual room inside Haddon Hall that we shot in. And one of the strangest things in doing a film like this is here you are shooting a sequence in a place that was built in 1086, and to imagine what was going on back then, and there would be obviously no way they could imagine that, almost 900 years later, that there would be a movie company in there filming, a sequence. I mean, the surreality of it all was palpable for me. And at one point, Chris Guest and myself and Mandy Patinkin got inside this room. Actually, the room that we were seeing here had a great echo and a great sound to it. when we started harmonizing an old doo-wop song. What's your name? Is it Mary or Sue? What's your name? That song, and we all harmonized that. And I thought, wow, this is bizarre. I mean, here's these guys harmonizing this song in a place where people were eating and throwing turkey legs over their shoulders, and dogs were I mean, it just, the whole idea of it was just amazing to me. You have to step back every once in a while and think about what you're doing and where you are in the world, because this was a place, like I say, was in 1086. This we built also. No, this was actually a place called Burnham Beaches, which was it's a wonderful medieval type forest that's right next to Heathrow Airport. And every 30 seconds you'd have a plane go over, which made it tough to film, but it's a great location. And we added a few of our own trees into the existing tree. There's no tree that has a door that opens like that at Burnham Beaches. At least we couldn't find one, so we. Again, this beautiful tone that Bill Goldman strikes with this dialogue is just great. And I loved the art department and their inventiveness in coming up with this what's called the machine, and it basically sucked the life out of you. I mean, the idea of these suction cups hooked up to a water wheel as a torture device is, to me, it was very inventive and funny. This is the scene where I'm talking about how Chris completely gets lost in a part. He's so brilliant in every movie he does, but like I say, he's so immersed that he loses himself, and you don't know where Chris, can't find Chris Guest anymore. Only the character's there. That little moment was nice that actor added. That's always what's great when you're making a film. You have really talented, creative actors. They give you little moments and things that you don't think of, and makes you look good. Here we are back at Burnham Beaches. We created the
Road squad had their carrying out Humperdinck's orders.
the Thieves' Forest. And here we have Mandy again. He was so brilliant in this movie. I can't imagine anybody else playing a part. Look at the size of Andre's hands. This is my favorite little moment. They put those, each checking his thumb against Andre's thumb to see if it's really Fezzik. When I auditioned Andre for this part, I gave him a scene that was only 3 pages long, and he read it. And I asked him; he was obviously perfect for the part, and I said to him, because he had never been in more than in one place more than 2 weeks at a time because of his wrestling. I said, this is going to require you to be, working on this film for 15 weeks. It's a long shoot. I mean, you have to be there 15 weeks. And he just thought that he was going to, for 15 weeks, he was going to do that 3-page scene. He didn't understand that there was a lot of scenes in the script that he had to do. And I said, no, there's a lot for you to do. It's going to take a while. And so he says, no, I'd do it. I could do it, boss. I'd do it. I said, okay. It's amazing when you watch Robin Wright's performance because this is a girl who was born in Texas and grew up in the San Fernando Valley of California. And she's got this perfect way of carrying herself, and she's got this perfect English accent, and um, she's so beautiful. And I can't imagine anybody else that could have done this. We are back in the pit of despair. that light right there on the castle just happened to be there when we shot that shot. We got very lucky. There were clouds all around, and then the sun poked through, and it was almost like the castle got its own key light, and we were lucky to get that shot. Now, the sequence coming up where Mandy prays for his father to help him find the man in black was a really difficult sequence to shoot. This speech right here, not because it was tough for Mandy, but because we had see the smoke behind him and we had this camera move. And like I say, literally every 10 to 15, 20 seconds, we'd have a plane going over at Heathrow Airport. So to get a good performance from Mandy, to get the camera move like that, and to get the halo kind of effect with the light behind him was a tough thing to pull off. But Mandy was incredibly patient. He stood there and did it. His performance was great every time. He did it 20 times in a row, and every time he was perfect. But we had technical problems, and finally we got one or two that were good. There's the hat. If you see it in the background, it's up on that light. The hat that Mark Knopfler asked that I put on the set. Isn't that weird? Here we have one of my favorite sequences in the whole film, and that's the sequence with Miracle Max. And Billy Crystal is just absolutely incredible in this performance. He's funny. He had his own ideas. He added his own lines. This thing about the paper cut, that was his line. But the character is a Bill Goldman character that's kind of loosely kind of taken from Mel Brooks's 2,000-Year-Old Man, and Billy was absolutely so much fun to work with, and it was just the right piece of comic acting right here at the movie at this point in the movie, and he's just absolutely great. That's all Billy stuff. Mutton, lettuce, and tomato sandwich.
Means to bluff.
And look for loose change, all of those things.
He cheated.
Things that he added, and that's what's so great working with him. And then, of course, here's Carol Kane, who plays a perfect nagging wife. They were great together. She took, I think, 7 or 8 hours into makeup every day. By the time we got her into makeup, she had to go home. They were great together. Here's the miracle pill. Looks like a Godiva chocolate. But this is also a great Billy line. Give it an hour, a good hour. And you also have to really appreciate Carrie L. West's performance. I mean, here's this great-looking young man who is a wonderful actor, and he has a great sense of comedy timing, but he's also great physically. This whole next sequence, as he plays this, almost dead, mostly dead person with a flopping and the moving around. I mean, it's so rare that you can find an actor who looks like this, who is so physically adept and has such great comedy timing. One of my favorite shots in the movie is pretty, and see that English countryside back there. This is one of my favorite performances. It's Peter Cook, who was originally with Beyond the Fringe, and he and Dudley Moore were partners for many years together. One of the most brilliant British comedians, and it's one of my favorite moments in the movie. You just have no way to know that when that man opens his mouth, that this is the way he's going to talk. Of course, here we have the Dread Pirate Roberts, complete with his Holocaust cloak. This is as low tech as it gets when it comes to special effects. Like I say, we didn't have much money to work with, but it works because it's funny and it serves the story. Like I say, this portcullis that you see here, this was added to the existing castle, and from what I understand, they decided to keep it. This coming up is one of my favorite sequences of the whole movie. You've got these three people who are trying to storm the castle and save the day. And the leader is the guy who's nodding his head in which direction they should go, and can barely stand, can't really walk. He's the one he's their leader. And this is a great little bit of swordplay that you see coming up. Of course, one of the great fake outs and funny moments in the movie comes after it, but this little bit of swordplay where he dispatches 4 people in one swoop. And then this unexpected moment, which gets one of the biggest laughs when it's played in a theater. And he just runs. This whole chase through the castle, we used sets on a stage, which this was, and then we cut to existing actual rooms in 2 or 3 different castles. This was an actual castle. I think this was Penshurst Castle. And then we're back on the set. Like I say, this was described in the script as the greatest sword fight in film history. Now, technically, it probably isn't, but like I say, the emotion of what's underneath all this makes it a really good scene. And that's after all these years, 20 years, he's been tracking this guy only to get knifed in the stomach, and then you'll see, and we all know that he is able to fight through that pain and emerge victorious. You got to admit, these are two of the better looking humans on the planet. They're totally storybook in the way they look. And aside from the fact that they're terrific actors. And here we have Inigo regrouping and pushing through the pain. And this is one of the favorite scenes in the whole film. The way in which Mandy just casually deflects the sword, even though he's being stabbed. And he just summons the strength. His performance in this is just magnificent. It's always got a big cheer when we played in the theater. You know the story's working when that happens. And it's a great moment where he bluffs him, totally bluffs him. He just has enough strength to stand, but he has no strength for nothing but that, and totally bluffs him here. That's a great shot, just the pulchritude in that shot, the level of pulchritude. There's a bit coming up where Princess Buttercup jumps out the window and Fezzik has to catch her. And again, we had such problems with Fezzik, with Andre's back. We had to rig a thing where we dropped her just from out of frame and we put him on a slant board so he'd be leaning backwards so there would be no strain on his back when he catches her. Because we tried it and it was just too hard for him. And there's the wide shot was a stunt guy. See, there you have it. You can actually even see it. There's a little board up there if you look carefully. We have this great, wonderful moment where the four heroes ride out on the four white horses. And I love this moment because now the boy is so hooked into the book that he even wants to hear the kissing part at the end. And it's so sweet. Coming up is the only shot we shot in Los Angeles. We did one pickup shot of Peter Falk saying, "As you wish," a close-up of him saying, "As you wish" at the door. And we shot that in Los Angeles. It was the only shot in the whole film that was not shot in England.
Hello.
And that's it. That shot. And now we're back in England again. And the song at the end was written by Willie DeVille, and it got nominated for an Academy Award. And it was the only Academy Award nomination we got for the movie. And I like these kind of credits at the end. They're old-fashioned. The old days, they used to do these, what they would call curtain call type credits, where, the actors would be shown in a bit of the movie and they put their names and characters' names in there, real names in there. And I just kind of like this. For this type of movie, it just felt so appropriate to have these kind of curtain call type credits. Well, as of, what's today's date? As of January 24th, 2001, these were the thoughts that I had on The Princess Bride. Call me in 10 years. Maybe there'll be others. Have fun storming the castle.